Well, welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1970 to 73 off-season carryover league look at the upcoming season that begins in 2022. Again, we're Tuesday. Look at the spreadsheets or the data from Baseball Reference. We introduced the 2560, which is, what does the 2560 mean? Just to review, it means that in any Strat-O-Matic League individual Strat-O-Matic cards that I have during this time frame, I expand the number of cards Strat-O-Matic created to get to 640 cards. And most of the time, when you have a 24-team Major League Baseball league, of course, and you have 24 player cards created, that's 20 cards for the team plus 4 additional players. Most of the time that number is 576, could be 577, 584. I create the balance of cards by looking at whatever stats I can find off Baseball Reference and just create nameless cards. I basically just use blank cards and write a name on them. I don't actually play these cards. The point of that exercise is to simply redraft the league and distribute the 640 players by my 32 carryover league teams. 20 per team, 32 teams equals 640. You see this tab here is the 640 cards of 1970. The records all are copied from Baseball Reference. These purple colors are the nameless ones. I don't use these in the league, in the carryover league. They get pulled out. They're there just to distribute talent, balance the talent throughout the 32 teams. And then, of course, you've got 1971. Same thing. When you get near the bottom, you see a lot of these purple guys. 640, 1972. Same thing, 640, and 1973, the rookie season, the untainted season. The complete box has not been used yet. 640. And you take 640, multiply it by 4, it's 2560. We introduced this last week. Tonight we're going to take a deeper dive. Now that we have a spreadsheet comprised of all eligible cards, some are already in the league, some are reserved to be kept, some are possibly going to be improved, waivered guys, retired guys, and guys who have not been in the league yet. Every possibility exists. We have a draft order we already know. Don't look at these results. This is the draft order in this column, and this is just last year's information just left there until I write new information on it. Last year's draft results, I'll click that, and here we go. California, the first pick last year. Again, a review of how the draft works is that a team doesn't mean that Cleveland gets 8 picks in a row. It just means that it's an 8-round draft. You plug in a player in one of the 8 spots, etc. Plug a player in one of the 8 spots, etc. The first round pick can be in any of the 4 years, but the second, third, and fourth round picks need to comprise the 4 years of the league in any order. You can take a 73 guy, a 71 guy, a 72 guy, and a 70 guy. Or you can go 71, 72, 70, 73. It doesn't matter. But your first 4 picks have to come from the first 4 years. Best player available. 5th round pick is the 1973 box because it's the biggest talent pool, and because that's a 4-year deal, you want to get a great player in the 5th round, not just some scrub. And then you go in reverse chronological order from 73, 72, 71, 70. Your 8th round pick, you're picking it from the smallest talent pool box the first year, since by this point you're going to have 192 plus 32, so 224. 224 of those cards are gone, plus a player who continues from 1970 to 71, 2, or 3 is also gone. Small talent pool because the 8th round of the draft is a lot like the free agent part of the draft, undrafted free agency. Little sidebar about the NFL draft. I know a lot of guys get drafted in the 7th round of the draft, but they don't necessarily make that team. Whereas an undrafted free agent are usually players sought out, playing for their career, and a lot of undrafted free agents make a team while 7th round picks get cut. Because the undrafted free agents are on the phone and they can talk to different teams about where they want to try out. Whereas a 7th round pick is just stuck with the team that drafted them and it might be a bad fit. Little sidebar there. Your comments are welcome on that idea. But anyway, the point of tonight's video is to take a deeper dive into the 25-60 to get some idea of what to expect in the draft that comes in March of 2022. Long way to go. Still can have trades in the hot stove league, as I like to call it, you know, in December when I'm bored and just want to trade players and see if there's a fit. But the thing I can do now is get an understanding of what teams might do. And I thought I would just kind of start with the first few teams in the draft, make about a 15-minute video or something, and then we'll call it. And tonight we're going to start by looking at what Cleveland would do with the first overall pick in the draft. Very important to start the draft with a bang. Last year, the California Angels were the worst team, had the first overall pick. They selected 1972 Nolan Ryan. And Nolan was only 25 years old then, but he had been called up as a very young man in the Mets. Did okay, but he really did well in 72. 228 ERA and 284 innings. Basically his best year in California. He was the first overall pick in the draft. And then, yeah, so it's nice to have a Hall of Famer, an MVP, All-Star, somebody like that go first overall. I kind of look for that just to get the draft moving in the right direction. So I kind of want to look for a pretty star-struck player for the Indians to take with that first overall pick. So I can scout this out. I'll go to the 25-60 spreadsheet and look at all 2,560 players. Who might the Indians take first overall? If we look under column D, this is sorted alphabetically by team. And it identifies, in the case of Cleveland, which is right here, it identifies, starting here, the 12 players that are currently on the Indians, which are 6 1970 guys, 4 71s, and 2 72s. We, of course, add 2 to each of those years. So you end up with 8 70s, 6 71s, 4 72s, and, of course, the 2 rookie cards from 1973. The light green shading you see, as these are in alphabetical order by player name, the light green are players that are also here as active players for the possibility of, do you want to swap cards out in a different year for a player? For instance, the Indians have, say, Larry Brown hitting 258, but if you wanted to, Larry Brown hits 196, and Larry Brown also hits 183 in the years of 1971 and 1972. So if you're in the mood to downgrade Larry Brown by about 50 points on a bad card, you're have at it. That's the point of these records. I know a lot of these records are unnecessary, but the point is to be complete, to know where all eligible cards are. So every card is in each of the 4 years boxes, and the spreadsheet gives you data to look at, so you don't have to keep opening and closing boxes and flipping through cards. You've got the stats right here in front of you. So the light green color here are guys you could improve. Now, each team can keep 4 guys, and those players are indicated in a blue shading with a letter K in column C indicating keeper. Tony Horton, you see just one row here. It's because he only has 1 more year. Then you got Vicente Romo. You got 4 years to choose from. Duke Sims, you got 4 years to choose from, as does Eddie Watt. You also have waived a couple guys. Dave Marshall, he's on waivers. Anybody could pick him up. His data is stored here, so to remind me that Cleveland waived him, just in case they change their mind, but he's waived. He's available to any major league team, as is Ray Washburn. And when you get through that, you see Cleveland's records end right there. Those are all the guys we know a little bit about. So the next question is, what about new guys? Let's page down a bit until we get alphabetically through all baseball teams. And when we do, which is Toronto, we are up to 1,810 of the 2,560 records. That means there's only 750 other cards to look at of guys who haven't been in the league yet, covering 4 seasons. In this next area, unshaded, colorless, if you want to call it that, this is the year 1970, and these are hitters. And there is a sort by position by OPS being used to help analysis, but I can always resort data to look at different columns of information. So your 1970 hitters go down to here. Your 1970 pitchers start and end here. Then your 1971 hitters, you'll notice you have E ratings in this box because the 70 set is a reissue and the E ratings are printed on the cards. So I calculated this is the 71 super expanded first edition set. So I calculated defense for these hitters and these pitchers. And then we have the 1972 players that are currently stored within the team that drafted them in the individual 72 season. Hitters and pitchers. And lastly, all of 1973 stored in that individual draft as well. So, and of course we have all those nameless cards. They're all down here. And you see this is row 2340, which means there are 220 of these nameless cards who are not included in the draft. So actually the 2560, when you think about it, is the 2340 of eligible guys. I'm not going to draft a card that I hand wrote the player's name on. The point is to use the ones that Strat-O-Matic created as best fit as I could get. So going back to Cleveland, let's see if there's a rookie in 73 that's currently in the Cleveland stack. That would be these gentlemen: Frank Duffy, Oscar Gamble, John Lowenstein, Charlie Spikes, Tom Hilgendorf, Brent Strom, Dick Tidrow. Something about that doesn't ring first overall pick in the draft. However, John Lowenstein was a highly sought-out player, I do recall, because he was a very special player coming out of college. I think he went somewhere, San Diego State or something like that. And it took him a while before he became a good major leaguer. It took him a long while, till the late 70s. And he could play all positions, but it doesn't mean he'd be the first overall pick in the draft. Oscar Gamble, but it takes him a while to get going. He has 20 homers here. So from the 73, it's not really looking promising. And then going back to Cleveland's players that we know about, those keepers, if one of those keepers turns into an all-star, MVP Hall of Famer, Tony Horton, Vicente Romo, Duke Sims, Eddie Watt. Of these guys, there is a nice player here that could warrant some consideration. And I want to click on the record right here. A 1972 Duke Sims card. And you're going to go, really? I know, folks. Probably not. But if you look a little closely in a limited playing time for Duke Sims, with this card he gets 316, a 432 on base, 480 slugging, a 912 OPS, over 900. So statistically, not by name recognition, but statistically, that would be a heck of a card to take in the first round. It passes the sniff test. But still, if you're the Indians, you probably need to make a bigger bang. I would say Duke Sims should probably be a second-round draft choice. So, what do the Indians do if they don't necessarily see a franchise-changing talent on the horizon? Do they trade? Well, I did a little research and I thought about this. And let me show you another baseball team, the Baltimore Orioles. So the Baltimore Orioles, winners of the last year, the 2020 World Series. The 2021 World Champion was, of course, the Mets. But the 1973 Baltimore Orioles have the American League Rookie of the Year, Al Bunbury. And Bunbury hit .337 and is your American League Rookie of the Year. Al Bunbury plays for Baltimore from here through the early 1980s. But Baltimore has a full outfield. They have Paul Blair and they have Don Buford. However, check this out. I've been thinking about this, and it seems to would be a pretty cool deal. Baltimore, one of their keepers is Hall of Famer Frank Robinson. Now, what if Baltimore said, well, we got to make room for Al Bunbury in our outfield, and Frank Robinson, his youngest year, he's 34 to 37 in this timeline. But he's Frank Robinson, so he's got the credentials. So what if Baltimore made room in their outfield for Al Bunbury and decided that they would trade Frank Robinson to the Cleveland Indians? Now, here's some more news. Frank Robinson, during this era, he actually played for the Dodgers, the Angels, and then eventually played for the Cleveland Indians, and then he managed the Cleveland Indians in 75-76. So Frank Robinson is connected to Cleveland. So we'd be rushing it a little bit, but under the constraints of making both teams happy, who would they trade? Who would the Orioles want in return for Frank Robinson? An older Frank Robinson. And again, Frank is still, he goes 306, 918, then he's 281, 894, 251, 795, 266, 861, as any player in his mid to late 30s would be. Well, Cleveland, do they have a guy the Orioles might be interested in? Tony Horton, Vicente Romo, Duke Sims, and wait a minute, folks, they have Eddie Watt. Eddie Watt played for the Baltimore Orioles. And Eddie Watt still has some good years left. In 71, a whip of a $1.18. 72, a whip of a $1.09. 73, a whip of a $1.16. So is it ridiculous for the Orioles to, and again, as far as balance of a trade, if you feel that the way I do it, that there is something needs to be thrown in, other players can be put in a trade to create balance. But one more item is a draft token. Teams start a draft with 5 draft tokens, and then they are used as a currency to balance trades and to put teams and to create an order of how the undrafted free agency goes. I'll show you real quickly here in last year's draft how undrafted free agency worked. The San Diego Padres collected tokens and had the first pick in undrafted free agency, the 5th pick in undrafted free agency, and the 14th pick in undrafted free agency, because they were collecting tokens in the draft by making trades like the one I'm talking about. So in this particular case, with Eddie Watt being just a guy, a good one though, really relief-wise, and with Frank Robinson being a Hall of Famer, I would say the Indians would trade Eddie Watt and a token to Baltimore for Frank Robinson. That might make everybody happy. Then the Orioles create a spot for Al Bunbury. And then with the first pick in the draft, the Cleveland Indians would take Frank Robinson. And that's a Hall of Famer. Remember, Nolan Ryan was a Hall of Famer taken first overall last year. I could see Frank Robinson being the first player taken overall by the Indians, particularly if he's going to be their manager in 4 or 5 years. So I'm digging it, at least at this point. And again, we're in November and the draft isn't until March. But that sounds like a lot of fun to me. Now, another thing to consider is that with his, stats down a little bit, you're looking at a Frank Robinson that really played on the 1970 and 71 World Series Baltimore teams. And do they really want to let a guy who got him in a 2 World Series go? But then again, the Orioles won a World Series last year, so they already have that feather in their cap. They would win only 1 World Series during this timeline. And bringing a young Al Bunbury and a .337 batting average, you might be willing to forget tradition and simply go with youth and statistics in that case. And if you're Cleveland, remember Cleveland had a record. We have the records here. They were 12-21 last year. Now Detroit was the miracle team that won a division with a losing record and then marched all the way to the World Series. But after all that winning in the playoffs, they still only finished a game over 500. If the Indians just get back towards 500, they could win this division. And if that happens, it could be very well because of Frank Robinson and bringing him into the cleanup spot of that team and being the leader of that team. Sort of, I'm thinking about it. It reminds me of when the Orioles got Frank Robinson from the Cincinnati Reds, because the Reds thought he was old, and the Orioles said, "We want him." And of course, history. Frank Robinson wins the Triple Crown. So it's a fun, interesting trade idea. Right now, it's probably the strongest idea I have for the Indians. All right, let's keep moving. I don't want to make this too long, but let's at least get to another team before we call it tonight. We have the Colorado Rockies picking second. An expansion team. An expansion team who was very good 2 years ago, but they were not able to follow up. They were not able to follow up with it in 2021. Let's go take a peek at Colorado and see if there's somebody obvious they should take with a second overall pick. Let's start with the keepers this time. Dick Drago, Andy Costco, Rick Monday, Ron Reed. Rick Monday plays with the Rockies all through the timeline as one of their best players in my history of creating this fictional Colorado team. Remember, I used the name Colorado Rockies just because I needed a new team, and it made sense to take a team that would come into existence in the 1990s and just send them back into the 70s and start their own franchise. Rick Monday became one of the benchmark players, and I identified Monday because he bounced around baseball. Monday played for the Oakland A's, Chicago Cubs, Los Angeles Dodgers. He moves around a lot, and I thought any player who moves around a lot is a good candidate for an expansion team. So Monday, as a keeper, getting his next card available into the league might make some sense. I'm looking at the statistics, though. In 70, Monday is an .844 OPS with a .290 average. 17 stolen bases, by the way, which is pretty cool. Very good glove, I'm assuming. He's a 2 everywhere. If he's a 1, that's a no-brainer if he's a 1 in center field. He's a 2 in center field the rest of the time with a nice arm. 73 is .841 OPS, .267 batting average, 26 home runs. First time he gets over 20. 92 walks. Nice card for a center fielder that I'm assuming hits left-handed pitching. Now, I don't have that information in front of me, so I could look at the Strat-O-Matic card or go to Baseball Reference and looking at splits. Is Rick Monday worth being the second overall pick in the draft? And could very well be. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But again, we have plenty of time until the draft. As I quickly look over any of the OPSs for light green shaded improve eligible players, nothing stands out. And when I look at pitchers whip, these are the columns I look at the most. This column here for hitters, and this column here for pitchers. Neither hitter or pitcher that you currently have being improved would make a lot of sense with the first overall pick. And as I go down to 73, the rookies for the Rockies, and see if they got some stud coming up, it would be these guys: Jackie Brown, Dave Hamilton, Joe Ferguson, Alphys Morris, Rusty Torres. Of that list, Alphys Morris is a nice card. 2.83 ERA in 89 innings. It's nice. It's not fantastic. Joe Ferguson has some nice power years for the Dodgers and Astros during this time. He became a Colorado Rocky. He's got an 839 OPS. That's not bad. It's almost what Rick Monday's was. One other option is that they did make a trade to acquire Andy Costco. And Andy Costco is a short sample size slugger. Guy who doesn't normally get a lot of at-bats, pinch hit a lot in the National League. And in 1973, he hits 280 with a 346 on-base percentage. But check it out, folks, a 568 slugging and a 914 OPS. So sometimes, particularly if it's an expansion team, you have to expect that you're not going to see a traditional Hall of Famer, MVP, All-Star taken. It's going to be a guy in the 100 at-bat, 50-inning pitch who dominates in a small sample size. And it could be you take 31-year-old Andy Costco having a monstrous year with 9 home runs in 118 at-bats. You play that out through a full season, you got a 50-homer guy playing pre-Humidor, Colorado. So I think it might be a choice between Andy Costco and Rick Monday as your first and second round picks. So we've seen a conventional team, Cleveland, an expansion team, Colorado. We'll do one more and then we'll call it. The team picking third is your Toronto Blue Jays. Another expansion team. Not expecting a lot. We'll take a look at it and then we'll call it for tonight and pick this up next time. The Toronto Blue Jays. Again, the reason I do this is I have no clue who the Toronto Blue Jays would take when they didn't even exist. So their players we are aware of are in this range. The 12 guys. When we look at the improvement eligible guys, I look at those quickly and there's nothing jumping off the screen there except possibly Paul Splittorff with a 118 whip. You could improve Splittorff to that. However, you might want to think about trading him to the Kansas City Royals, the team he rightfully played for. So a trade chip is always good. One of the big moves in the offseason for Toronto was acquiring Tommy Agee from the New York Mets, as the Mets had too many keepers, and so they had to move one. Tommy drew the short straw, and the Mets said, let's put him somewhere where he doesn't hurt us. We obviously don't want him in the National League. Let's put him in the American League East, and maybe he'll beat up on the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Orioles. So it's a win-win for the Mets in Toronto. So before we get to AG, let me just first consider your other keepers. Frank Fernandez. Talk about a cool 1971 card. He hits 171. Think about this. He hits 171 with a 414 on base, 488 slugging, and a 902 OPS. I want this card in the league. I don't know what round it's going to be, but that's just going to be a goofy looking card. That should be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get that card in the league. Mike Lum has a nice 1973, hitting 294, 351, 462, 813. Not bad. Probably not a first-round pick. And then Carl Taylor hit 340 last year, and from here on out, he doesn't get higher than 265. So I think it's AG, the new kid on the block. His first year, he's going to be a 1 in center field with a great arm, can steal bases. 286, 344, 469. It's an 812 OPS. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. You make Tommy AG your first round pick. And again, it's best player available. If you could find a guy better than Tommy AG, have at it. Let's go take a peek at the 1973 guys who haven't seen in the league yet, and see if there's somebody better than Tommy for Toronto. And here they are. Here are your candidates. Mick Kelleher, Tom Murphy, Elias Sosa, Otto Velez, Tom Ragland, John Stevenson, Jesse Jefferson. A lot of pitchers there. Well, none of the hitters have an OPS over 651, so that's not good. And the relievers are all okay, but again, okay is, first round pick. I don't see it. So I'm thinking Tommy AG will be the first round pick for the Toronto Blue Jays. It would support why that trade was made. And frankly, as we look now and wrap this video up, if Cleveland went Frank Robinson, if Colorado went Rick Monday, because he's got the name recognition, he'll always play for Colorado as long as they do the carryover league. And Tommy AG as Toronto, changing the improving their chances. Those would be a good top 3 players taken in the draft. All right, that's it for tonight. We will pick this up next time and go over the next group of teams. As again, there's a lot of time before the draft, so it's not kind of cool to have these little videos in the winter months leading into the Hot Stove League and the draft. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you next time.